So if you caught my last video in which I recapped day 4 of the Bulls training camp, I also included 2 mailbag questions from the initial list of questions and mentioned that I'll be doing a full dedicated video to all of your guys' questions at a later time, and well, here it is. Also guys, don't forget that the Bulls' first preseason game is just 2 days away. Yes, 2 days away, although it is just the preseason and doesn't count for anything. It'll still be very exciting to watch this new Bulls roster in action on the court, so make sure you're tuning into it. I'll also have a live game chat for you all on the channel as well if you are interested. But anyway, let's get into your question, shall we? So what's going on, everyone? You are listening to Bulls Central here. Hope you're all doing well. Our first question comes to us from Taylor Murphy. Where do you see the Bulls after Lavine, Lonzo, DeRozan, and Vuce when their contracts expire? Well, it's a tough question because all of their contracts do not expire at the same time. It's not like they all end on the same season and then you just assess where the Bulls are at from there. But I'll kind of go by player on this one. So for Lavine, we all know his contract expires at the end of this season and he's going to be set to become an unrestricted free agent. And the hope is that the Bulls re-sign him to a max extension. So as far as where the Bulls will be, well, it just depends on how they do this season, but really what you see right now is the team that will be in place when Lavine's contract expires. Now, as far as Lonzo, so the Bulls signed him to a 4-year deal, so his contract won't expire until 2025, which seems like such a long ways away, but you would hope that by then that the team will be in title contention. Otherwise, what was all this building for and going all in to be contenders if it's not going to happen within at least 2 to 3 seasons? Now, for DeRozan and Vucevic, these ones are a little trickier because when their contracts expire, which will be 2023 for Vuce and 2024 for DeRozan, Vuce will be 32 and DeRozan will be 34, both of which they'll be close to their following birthdays at the time that their contracts are about to expire. I actually don't anticipate that the Bulls will be re-signing either of these guys, and that's not to say that they couldn't get the deal done, but rather they're going to have better options when their contracts are coming up for renewing. The Bulls will want guys who are younger in their prime, and signing or re-signing Vucevic and DeRozan to extensions at their ages with their contracts expiring at that time likely wouldn't make sense unless, of course, they're still playing at a very high level and they're really able to just get them on shorter term deals or even cheap contracts for that matter. So it's a hard question to answer because you can't really say for a certainty where the Bulls will be with each of these, given the fact that their seasons and when their contracts expire will be at different times. But I think the point really is that the Bulls should be competing for a title by the time their contracts expire. Doesn't mean that they're going to re-sign all of these guys, but I don't see it being a case of, well, their contracts are expiring, we can't keep them, and now we suck again because all the free agents we brought in left and didn't pan out. Next, we've got Cedric Valleys. How good of a half-court point guard do you think Lonzo will be? A lot of Bulls fans seem to be of the opinion that he's good at it, but Pelicans fans seem to think that he's not. Well, I think what's pretty obvious anyway is that Lonzo is a much better point guard and facilitator in transition. He kind of always has been, even in his college days. He's great at moving the ball quickly and finding the open man on a fast break and does well enough to the point where he doesn't commit too many turnovers doing it. So it's not to say that Lonzo isn't good when operating in the half court and running the offense. It's just that he's exceptionally a better point guard in transition. That being said, he's still a great passing point guard. I mean, as much as I have been hesitant on Lonzo all of last season and just not as high on him as other Bulls fans have been, I can acknowledge the fact that he is a great playmaker and a better playmaker than the Bulls have had in over a decade. I think the thing for the Pelicans and the fans anyway, and this sentiment that he doesn't operate well in the half court, is because his role didn't allow for him to do that last season. When he was on the Lakers, at least in his rookie year before LeBron got there, he was decent at playing in the half court and averaged 7.2 assists per game in his rookie year. I think what people are probably questioning more is who is going to be the primary ball handler in the half court, because DeRozan displayed last season that he is a very capable playmaker in the half court with his ability to run pick and rolls and quick feeds in the paint. I mean, really, at least based on what we saw from last season anyway, DeRozan is a better playmaker in the half court than Lonzo is. That doesn't mean that, that will be the case in this upcoming season with the Bulls, but DeRozan averaged more assists per game than Lonzo did last year, and he did it mostly being the primary ball handler in the half court. for the Spurs. So I do think that, you know, the quote-unquote point guard role will be shared between Lonzo and DeRozan in terms of who will be handling the ball and setting up most of the plays, with Lonzo being the go-to guy in transition, while DeRozan will be mainly the guy operating in the half court. I'm sure that will change here and there throughout the season depending on how the team performs and adjusts to this, but that's what I think is likely to happen. So to answer your question though, I mean, Lonzo is a point guard, and he's a true pass-first point guard, and I think he's still good at operating in the half court, and he will be for the Bulls, just sharing that role with DeRozan. Next, we've got Kareem Hemdat. Will the Bulls crack 50 wins, and how deep in the playoffs will they go? Well, I've touched on this before, and as much as I would love to see the Bulls win 50 or more games this season, and I hope that they will, I just don't think that it's likely to happen. And the reason I say that is because I do think this team will go through a bit of a learning curve, given these are mostly new players who have played together for the first time. Building that team chemistry, that rhythm, and that identity can take a little bit of time. Not only that, but the Bulls have a rough patch of scheduling in November that is going to make things challenging in terms of being able to get off to a strong start. So I think for that reason, the Bulls might struggle at the beginning of the year and not win as many games as some Bulls fans would like to see. I do have them winning somewhere in the range of 45 to 48, which again isn't far off from 50, but even 45 to 48 wins in my view is enough to show that this team is back and relevant again to building even more going into next season. As far as how deep they can make a run into the playoffs, well, I think I might have mentioned this before, but I think for the Bulls, their ceiling of how deep they can make it into the playoffs is the Eastern Conference Finals. And even that, in my view, is a bit of a stretch. But I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility, because you always have these Cinderella stories where teams just start clicking during the playoffs and they make these deep runs as a result, like the Hawks or the Suns of last year. And who knows? You know, I mean, maybe that could potentially be the case for the Bulls. But if we're going to be realistic, I think the Bulls likely cap out with a second round exit, just because the East is going to be very strong this season, which is still incredible compared to what we have seen from this Bulls team in the past 5 to 7 years. I will take a second round exit if it means we're building more towards the future going forward. Next, we've got Cool Frosty. What happens if the new additions turn out to be busts or cannot create perfect chemistry? Sorry for being negative, but you gotta be prepared for worst case scenarios, and it's a topic worth discussing. Thanks, bro. Keep up the hustle. Well, I appreciate the question, because of course I think every so often us Bulls fans, as excited as we are about this season and the hype of this team and the biases that we have of how good that we will be, we also have to realize there is a chance this team doesn't work out, that all of these new additions just don't live up to the expectations that we had of them, and at that point, well, then what? Now, first and foremost, I think the new additions will pan out and the team will be fine and they will fit well together, both in terms of team chemistry and performance on the court. But like you said, if they turn out to be busts, what happens? Well, depending on how big of bust they end up being, I mean, if the team just completely flops and all of these guys play horribly together, then you really have to blow it up. You don't waste time and hope that, well, maybe it was just this season, maybe they'll rebound next year and get better if we make some adjustments. No, if it ends up being really, really bad, you abort the experiment, trade the assets to try and get as much value in return, and start over. It would be a nightmare of a scenario, and I can almost guarantee that it will not happen. But in the event that it does, like you said in your question, yeah, you just need to hit the rebut button. There's really no other way about it. Next, we've got a question from the Discord, which you should definitely consider joining the Discord, by the way. The link to that is in the description. But we have Zoa. Who are the best possible centers that can sign in the trade deadline? Also, if we trade Coby White for another shooting guard, who do you think it is? So I might need a little clarity on this one, because you said who are the best possible centers we can trade for at the deadline. I assume you mean that by being backup centers, because we already have Vucevic, so there wouldn't be a need to sign another starting type centers. So if you do in fact mean the best possible backup to give us more depth, I mean, really the best possible one I could see, but I know he probably wouldn't accept a role coming off the bench, and that's Miles Turner. I mean, Miles Turner, not only does he give you some depth in the front court, which the Bulls absolutely need, but he's an incredible rim protector, one of the best rim protectors in the league, which is something the Bulls are going to need given they lost Daniel Tice and Thaddeus Young. He's only 24, he averaged 3.4 blocks per game last year, leading the league in blocks, and it's no secret the Pacers have been looking to trade him for a while now. Do I think that it would happen though? Probably not, because the Bulls don't really have the trade chips to make it enticing enough for the Pacers, but in my view, he would be the best possible center for the Bulls, again, coming off the bench anyway, since we already have Vucevic. As for Coby White, I mean, if Coby does in fact get traded at the deadline, I can't see it being for another shooting guard, since the Bulls are already crowded in the backcourt with Coby. If anything, they would want to move him to a team that is in need of some backcourt scoring and maybe is a little too loaded in the front court. Maybe for a team like the Cavs, still a head scratcher that they wanted Lauri Markkanen when they already have Jared Allen. They just drafted Evan Mobley and still have Kevin Love, but whatever, that team is a mess. Doesn't help that they also signed our guy Denzel Valentine. Next up, we've got another question from the Discord. We've got Mr. Duck 3. Will Troy Brown Jr. get traded at the deadline? I really can't see that happening, especially since this was a hand-picked trade by the new front office at the deadline last year. And although he was injured most of the season after getting traded to the Bulls, I think the Bulls really value his hustle on the defensive end and see upside potential in this kid, given he's only 22 and has also shown he can be a solid offensive player. All that being said, though, you know, aside from Coby White, who in my view is the Bulls' player with the highest trade value outside of anyone in the starting lineup, of course, but outside of Coby White, Troy Brown Jr. likely has the highest trade value for the Bulls just because he's young, has potential, and is on a cheap rookie contract. I mean, if the Bulls get enticed enough with a trade package to improve the team even further, and that package includes Troy Brown Jr., yeah, sure, I wouldn't be surprised if he was dealt at the deadline in that scenario, but I think it's unlikely to happen. Let's do one more, and this one comes to us from Wow0406. Do you think the Bulls can finish top 10 in defensive rating this season, considering we were top 15 last year with not as many good defenders and all the moves that we made this offseason? Yeah, I mean, this was one of my bold predictions for the Bulls in this upcoming season in a prior video that I made, and the way that I think that they will finish top 10 in defense this year. I really do think this team is going to surprise so many people by just how good they will be on defense this year. And I'm not saying that they're going to be that good, but more so that they'll surprise people on the defensive end, because so many view this Bulls team to be a complete disaster on defense for this upcoming season. Again, when you look at their roster, you have strong defenders in Lonzo and Patrick in the starting lineup. Lavine, if he can play defense like he did in the Olympics, that's another huge plus. And then off the bench, Caruso, who was one of the best reserve defenders last season, Troy Brown Jr., Derrick Jones Jr., Stanley Johnson, Ayo Dosunmu, Tony Bradley, all very, very underrated defenders in their own right. Like, I get this team lost Thaddeus and Daniel Tice, but they also added a number of great defensive players that are being completely overlooked. And if the Bulls were able to finish 12th in defensive rating last season with the players they had, there is no reason to think that they can't be better with the pieces they added for this upcoming year. I don't think that they're going to be top 5 or anything like that. I think they'll likely finish between 8th and 10th in the league in defensive rating. Wait, actually, I've got to do one more. This one is from Felicio Jr. Will Cristiano Felicio ever make an NBA roster again? No. Just no. I mean, I hear Felicio is doing very well in Germany. I believe he's playing overseas in Germany. I haven't really been following him at all, and I'm happy he's finding success because Felicio does actually seem like a very nice guy, but no, he's not fit for an NBA roster, and I don't believe he ever will be. He was just lucky enough to be dealing with incompetence and got himself a fat payday that should have never been given. No offense though, Felicio Jr., you know I love you as one of my OGs from the Discord. Appreciate the question. Anyway, guys, I'll end it there for this edition of Bulls Mailbag. I'll try and continue these throughout the season here and there. Thanks to all those who left their questions, and sorry if I wasn't able to get to yours. I will do my best to get to them the next go around. As always, be sure to subscribe if you're a Bulls fan, as I do post daily Bulls content. Thanks again for tuning in, guys, and I will catch you in the next one.